The words left her mouth so fast, I almost didn't register them. I hate you, Mom. For a split second, everything froze, the sound of the TV in the background, the clinking of dishes in the sink, even my heartbeat. My 16-year-old daughter, Emily, stood at the bottom of the staircase, her face flushed red, her eyes glistening with tears and rage that she'd yelled at me before, slammed doors, rolled her eyes, muttered under her breath. Teenage storms that blew over by dinner time. But this wasn't one of those. Those 3 words didn't sound like frustration. They sounded like truth, and the truth broke me. I didn't say anything back. I couldn't. I just stood there, holding a half-folded towel in my hands, frozen in the middle of the hallway. It felt like my chest had caved in, like every breath I took scraped against glass. She turned away first. Her footsteps thundered up the stairs, each one like a drumbeat pounding against my heart. Then came the slam, sharp, final, echoing through the house. The picture frame of her kindergarten graduation rattled on the wall and tilted slightly, as if even it couldn't bear the weight of what had just happened. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just stared at the stairs, half expecting her to come back down, to take it back, to say she didn't mean it. But she didn't, and I was too afraid to follow her. The house fell into that strange, heavy kind of silence that only exists after an argument, when everything looks the same, but nothing feels familiar anymore. The towel slipped from my hands. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, trying to hold back tears that burned the back of my throat. I told myself, she's just a teenager. She didn't mean it. It's just hormones, stress, growing pains. But no matter how many excuses I whispered to myself, her words clung to me like a stain I couldn't wash off. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I sat alone on the living room couch. The TV flickered silently in front of me, playing some sitcom laugh track that felt painfully out of place. I had made myself a cup of chamomile tea, hoping it would calm me, but it went cold before I even touched it. I kept staring at the hallway, at the faint light coming from under her door upstairs, wondering what was happening in her mind. Was she crying? Was she still angry? Or worse, did she really mean it? My mind kept replaying her words like a broken record. I hate you. How did we get here? When did love turn into anger? And when did my daughter, the little girl who used to crawl into my lap every night to watch Frozen for the 100th time, start to hate me? I thought about those nights. Her tiny hands clutching her stuffed penguin. The way she'd lean her head against my shoulder and sing Let It Go with all the confidence in the world, slightly off-key but so proud of herself. Back then, she thought I could fix anything. A scraped knee, a broken toy, a bad dream. Everything could be made right with a kiss and a cuddle. Now, she wouldn't even look me in the eye. I wanted to believe this was just a phase. Every parent says it. Teenagers are tough. They'll come around. But something inside me whispered that this wasn't just a phase. This felt like a crack that had been forming for a while, one I hadn't noticed until it finally split open. Maybe it started when her dad and I divorced 2 years ago. Or maybe it started before that, when I started working late, missing her school recitals, promising next time too many times. Maybe the distance between us wasn't sudden at all. Maybe it had been quietly growing, inch by inch, while I was too busy trying to hold everything else together. I looked around the house, the same house that once echoed with her laughter, her singing, her endless stories about school and friends. Now it was filled with silence and shadows. Even the walls seemed tired of holding memories. When I finally went upstairs, I paused outside her room. The light was off, but I could hear faint music playing through her headphones. I raised my hand to knock, just once, but I couldn't. What would I even say? I'm sorry? For what? For trying too hard to protect her? For not trying enough to understand her? For being a mother she no longer recognized? I stood there for a long time, my hand hovering near her door, before finally lowering it. Good night, baby, I whispered softly, even though I knew she couldn't hear me. Then I walked back to my room, lay in the dark, and stared at the ceiling, wondering when exactly my little girl had turned into someone who looked at me and saw a stranger. Emily was my miracle baby. I had her when I was 28, after 2 heartbreaking miscarriages. I remember the sterile hospital room, the cold fluorescent light above me, and the way my hands trembled when the nurse finally placed her in my arms. She was so small, barely 6 pounds, but her grip on my finger was fierce. I whispered, "You're my whole world now." And I meant it with every fiber of my being. For the first 12 years of her life, it really did feel like it was just the 2 of us against the world. Her father, Michael, and I had divorced when she was 5. The separation wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just 2 tired adults realizing that love had slowly slipped through their fingers. Michael got a job in Denver, promising to visit every month. At first, he did. He'd take Emily to the zoo or the park, bring her stuffed animals and small souvenirs from the airport gift shop. But months turned into years, and the visits turned into phone calls, and then, eventually, into the occasional text. So, for most of her childhood, it was just me and Emily, cereal breakfasts before school, sing-alongs in the car, and Friday movie nights on the couch with blankets and popcorn. Our house, a modest two-bedroom in a quiet Seattle suburb, always smelled faintly of vanilla candles and laundry detergent that I worked as a medical billing coordinator at a local clinic. Not glamorous, but stable. I made enough to keep us comfortable. Bills paid, pantry stocked, the occasional ice cream run on weekends.
Emily never asked for much. She wasn't the type to beg for fancy toys or new clothes.
She was content with what she had, a stack of books, her sketchpad, and the occasional science kit from the craft store. She was bright, brighter than I ever was at her age. Curious, observant, always asking why. She loved animals, loved baking with me on Sundays, loved painting our backyard fence in wild splashes of color one summer afternoon when she was 10. She was full of life, the kind of child who'd pick dandelions and call them flowers for mama. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, small, steady, warm. But around the time she turned 13, something began to shift. It started subtly, almost invisibly. A roll of her eyes when I asked her to set the table.
A sigh when I reminded her to do homework. Closed bedroom doors. Shorter conversations.
Where there once were stories about school and friends, there were now vague one-word answers. Fine.
Good.
Nothing. I told myself it was normal. Every article, every parent I spoke to, said the same thing. Teenagers pull away.
It's a phase. So I gave her space.
I didn't want to be the overbearing mom who snooped or nagged, but the space only grew wider. The pandemic hit right after her 13th birthday. Suddenly, our little home, once our safe haven, became a cage. Online classes, isolation, social media overload. I saw it wear her down. Day by day, she stopped waking up early. Stopped brushing her hair unless I reminded her. Some days, she wouldn't leave her room until noon. Her laughter, that big, contagious sound that used to fill our house, disappeared. In its place was silence, or the faint sound of her phone playing TikToks late into the night.
I tried everything.
I'd slip handwritten notes under her door. Proud of you. Dinner's your favorite tonight.
Love you.
Sometimes I'd find them later, still untouched on the floor. I started cooking her favorite meals, homemade mac and cheese, her comfort food since kindergarten. Sometimes she'd eat quietly. Other times, she'd just take her plate upstairs. I tried to strike up conversations, about school, friends, anything, but she'd respond with shrugs, eyes fixed on her phone. Her grades began to drop, not drastically, but enough for teachers to email me with concerns. I'd sit her down, try to talk about it, but it always ended the same way. I'm fine, Mom. Emily, this isn't like you.
Can you not? You don't get it. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't get it. I blamed myself. Maybe I was working too much. Maybe I wasn't present enough. I had taken extra shifts at the clinic to cover expenses when inflation hit. Groceries, gas, utilities, everything was more expensive. I told myself I was doing it for us, but maybe what she really needed wasn't money. Maybe it was me sometimes. When I'd get home after a long day, I'd stand in her doorway and just watch her head bent over her phone, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. It felt like watching someone through glass. I was close enough to touch her, but too far to reach her. Then came the small arguments, over messy rooms, undone chores, her constant earbuds. Little things that built up like drops of water wearing away. At Stone Point one evening, after a 12-hour shift, I came home exhausted. My feet ached, my head pounded. The kitchen was a mess. Cereal spilled across the counter, milk left out, dirty dishes piled high. I called out, Emily, can you please clean this up? From upstairs came her muffled reply, I'll do it later. I sighed, setting down my purse. You always say that and then forget. Just do it now, honey. Her door opened with a loud creak. God, Mom.
Why do you care so much about stupid dishes?
I wanted to answer gently. I wanted to breathe and count to 10. But exhaustion does strange things.
My patience snapped. Because this isn't a hotel, Emily. You live here too. You need to help. A beat of silence. Then she came stomping down, grabbed the bowl off the counter, and muttered under her breath, You're so annoying. It stung more than I admitted. I stood there, watching her shove the bowl into the sink with a clatter, and something inside me wilted. Not because of the words themselves, kids say worse, but because of the tone. There was a sharpness there I'd never heard before. A kind of resentment. Still, I let it go. Teenagers fight with their parents all the time, right? I told myself it was just another bump in the road. But deep down, something heavy lingered. Over the next few months, our relationship became a series of missed moments. She'd leave for school before I was up. I'd come home after she was already in her room. Even weekends felt empty. Sometimes I'd knock on her door, just to check in. Hey, kiddo, want to go for ice cream? No, I'm busy. Too busy for ice cream. I'd joke. She'd look up briefly, a faint smile tugging at her lips before fading. Maybe next time. Next time. Those words started to sound like an echo of my own excuses from years ago, when she was little, waiting by the window for me to come home from work. There was one night I'll never forget. It was raining, that slow, steady Seattle rain that sounds like whispers against the windows. I was in the kitchen, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Pictures of us at the zoo, at the beach, at her 10th birthday, her missing front tooth and frosting on her cheek. She walked in, grabbed a glass of water, and I saw my chance. Hey, remember this? I showed her the photo. Your first time at the aquarium. You cried when the jellyfish swam away. She glanced at it, expression unreadable. Yeah. I was a kid, Mom. I know, I said softly. You were my favorite kid. She didn't respond. She just filled her glass and left. That night, after she went to bed, I cried quietly in the kitchen. Not because she'd been rude, but because I realized I couldn't remember the last time she'd called me Mummy. I told myself she'd come back around. She had to. I held on to hope like it was air, but hope can be fragile. A few weeks later, I found out she'd skipped a full day of school. The school called me during work. I drove home in a panic, imagining the worst. When I finally got there, she was in her room, headphones on, completely unbothered. Emily. I said, my voice trembling more than I meant it to. Do you realize how worried I was? Why didn't you go to school? She sighed, took out one earbud, and said flatly, I just didn't feel like it. Didn't feel like it. I repeated. You can't just, can you stop? She snapped, her eyes flashing. You don't get it, okay? You never do. Her words sliced through me like paper cuts, small but deep. Did I wanted to ask, then help me understand. But the moment had already slipped away. She'd turned her music back on, and I stood there, defeated. That night, lying in bed, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know my daughter anymore. Not her favorite song, not the name of her best friend, not even what made her smile these days. Somewhere along the way, between work shifts and responsibilities, I had lost her. And I didn't know how to find her again. It all came to a head in early spring. Seattle springs are strange, gray skies, chilly rain, and sudden bursts of sunlight that vanish before you can even find your sunglasses. But that year, the season felt different. The air in our house was heavy, charged, like a storm waiting to break. Emily had started hanging out with a new group of friends, girls who wore eyeliner thick as armor and boys who drove old cars with bass so loud it made the streetlights shake. I didn't judge them at first. Teenagers change, I told myself. They experiment, they grow. But as the weeks passed, I noticed subtle shifts, little pieces of my daughter disappearing. She traded her soft pastels for black hoodies and ripped jeans. Her messy bun became sleek, straightened hair. She stopped sketching in her notebook, stopped humming in the kitchen, stopped talking to me altogether. Her room became a no-entry zone. She started coming home later and later. At first, it was 10. Then 10:30. Then midnight. When I called her, sometimes her phone went straight to voicemail. Sometimes she'd text, can't talk. With friends. And sometimes, nothing at all. One night, it was almost midnight when I heard the front door creak open. I was sitting on the couch in the dark, waiting, my tea cold, my heart pounding. When the door clicked shut, I flicked on the lamp. Where were you? I asked quietly. She froze mid-step, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. Her mascara was smudged, her hair messy, smelling faintly of cigarette smoke. At Jenna's, she said quickly. We were watching a movie. Until midnight. She shrugged, eyes darting away. We lost track of time. I stood up, my voice trembling between fear and anger. Emily, it's a school night. You can't just disappear like that. I was worried sick. She rolled her eyes, that practiced, dismissive teenage gesture that made me feel invisible. You're always worried about something. I'm not a kid anymore. You're 16, I snapped before I could stop myself. That's still a kid. She gave a bitter laugh. You just don't get it. And maybe I didn't. She brushed past me, the smell of cheap perfume lingering in the air, and stomped up the stairs. Her door slammed shut, rattling the picture frames on the wall. I stood there in the dim light, staring at the empty staircase, my heart sinking. Every time we fought, it felt like another wall went up between us, higher, thicker, harder to climb. Over the next few weeks, the arguments became routine. Curfew, grades, chores, her phone, her attitude. It felt like every word I said was gasoline, and every response of hers was a spark. Did you finish your homework? I'll do it later. Later turns into never, Emily. Why are you always on my case? It was like we were speaking two different languages, but what truly broke me was the call from her school counselor one afternoon while I was at work. Mrs. Harrison. The woman's tone was polite but cautious. We've noticed Emily's been absent for several classes this month. Is everything okay at home? For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there at my desk, surrounded by stacks of patient files, feeling the air leave my lungs. When I finally found my voice, it came out shaky.
Absent? Are you sure?
Maybe there's been a mistake.
I'm afraid not, the counselor said gently. Her teachers are concerned.
She's been distracted, withdrawn. If there's anything going on, we'd like to help. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there, staring at nothing. My hands trembled as I tried to process what I'd heard.
Emily wasn't just drifting. She was falling. And I hadn't seen it.
That evening, when she came home, I waited until she dropped her backpack in the hallway. Your school called me today, I said carefully. Her face went pale.
What? Why?
They said you've been skipping classes.
She looked away, crossing her arms. It's not a big deal.
Everyone skips sometimes. Emily, you can't just decide not to go to school. Her voice rose instantly, defensive, sharp.
Why do you care so much?
Because I'm your mother. I snapped, my voice cracking. It's my job to care. She glared at me, her cheeks flushed red. You just want to control me.
Control you? I said, stunned.
Emily, I'm trying to protect you.
From what?
From living my life, she shouted. The room seemed to shrink around us, just the two of us standing in the kitchen, years of love and memories collapsing under the weight of anger. You think I don't see what you're doing, she went on, her words shaking. You track my phone, you check my homework, you call the school, you don't trust me. You treat me like I'm some kind of criminal.
My throat tightened.
I don't track you because I don't trust you.
I do it because I love you. Because you don't tell me where you are anymore. You shut me out.
Because you make everything a fight, she screamed, tears welling up. You twist everything I say. You never listen. I'm listening right now, I said softly, my own eyes blurring. Tell me what's wrong, sweetheart.
Please.
For a moment, she looked at me, really looked, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she would.
But then something hardened in her expression. Her jaw clenched.
Her fists tightened. You want to know what's wrong, she said, voice trembling.
You are.
You're what's wrong.
I took a step back as if she'd hit me.
Emily, you don't understand anything I'm going through, she said, her voice breaking.
You act like your life is the only one that matters.
You're always tired, always angry, always blaming me. I can't even breathe without you hovering over me. Her tears started falling then, fast and hot. And before I could say another word, she screamed, I hate you, Mom. The words hung in the air, raw, jagged, irreversible. Then she turned and ran up the stairs, her sobs echoing through the house before the door slammed shut, and I just stood there for a long time. I couldn't move. My hands were shaking, my chest tight. The silence that followed was worse than any yelling, thick, suffocating, final. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the empty staircase, tears streaming down my face. When I finally sat down, it was like every part of me had gone numb. The house was still, but my mind was chaos, replaying her words again and again until they didn't even sound real anymore. Did I hate you? The same little girl who once told me she wanted to be just like me when she grew up. The same child who used to slip her hand into mine when we crossed the street. The same voice that once said, Love you, Mummy. Now those words were gone, replaced by something I didn't know how to fix. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, the clock ticking past 2 a.m., the rain tapping gently on the windows. I kept expecting to hear her door open, footsteps coming down, her whispering I'm sorry. But the house stayed silent. I thought about knocking on her door, but my legs felt heavy. My heart hurt too much to move. Instead, I stared at the family photos on the wall, each one now feeling like a snapshot from another life. There was one from her 8th birthday, both of us laughing, faces covered in frosting.
I remember that day so clearly.
She had insisted on baking her own cake, and it had collapsed in the middle, but we'd eaten it anyway. It had tasted perfect. Now, it felt like that little girl was gone. By morning, her door was still closed. I listened for any sound, music, movement, but heard nothing. On my way to work, I stood outside her room for a long moment, my hand on the doorknob. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. So I just whispered, I love you, baby, and left. At work, I went through the motions. Typed, answered calls, smiled at patients. But inside, I felt hollow. My mind replayed every argument, every harsh word I'd thrown back at her. Had I been too strict? Too distant? Too tired to notice her pain? That evening, when I came home, she was in her room again, door closed, headphones in. I knocked gently. No answer. I knocked again. I made dinner. Still nothing. So I left a plate outside her door and went downstairs, my chest aching. I could hear faint music through the ceiling, angry, loud, the kind that vibrated through the floorboards, and I realized then that maybe this wasn't just about dishes, or curfews, or skipped classes. Maybe she was hurting in ways I didn't understand, ways she couldn't even name, but how could I help her if she wouldn't let me in? I sat on the couch that night, holding her old baby blanket, the faded pink one with tiny stars on it.
She'd had it since she was born.
I don't know why I grabbed it, but something about it made me feel close to her again. Even if just for a moment. As I traced the worn edges of the fabric, I whispered into the quiet, "I'm still your mom, Emily. I'm not giving up on you." But deep down, I didn't know if she could still hear me that night. I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the room lit only by the soft glow of the streetlight outside. The words echoed over and over in my head. "I hate you, mom." It didn't matter that she was angry, that she probably didn't mean it. It still cut straight through me. I kept replaying every moment that led up to it, every argument, every raised voice, every slammed door.
Maybe if I'd been calmer. Maybe if I'd listened more.
Maybe if I'd hugged her instead of lecturing her, but I couldn't change the maybes. The next morning, her door stayed closed.
I knocked gently before leaving for work.
Breakfast's ready." No answer. I waited for a few seconds, hoping she'd open the door.
But she didn't.
Eventually, I heard the faint sound of her phone vibrating, then silence again. She left early that day.
I saw her backpack missing from the hallway hook when I came downstairs.
The toast I'd made sat untouched on the counter. And that's how the days went, quiet, distant, painfully civil.
She'd leave before I woke up, and I'd come home long after she was in her room.
When we did cross paths, it was brief, polite but empty.
"Hey." "Hi."
"How was school?"
"Fine."
I'd cook dinner and leave her plate on the table. Sometimes it would be gone by morning. Sometimes it would sit there cold, like a reminder of everything I was failing at. I felt helpless. So, I did something I'd never done before. I called a therapist. It felt strange, admitting I needed help. I'd spent years telling myself therapy was for people who couldn't handle life, not for single moms who just had to push through.
But pushing through had only left me bruised and exhausted.
Monroe was calm, soft-spoken, the kind of person who made silence feel safe. She didn't judge me when I cried during the first session. She just listened after I told her about Emily, the distance, the fights, the "I hate you." She leaned forward and asked one question that would change everything. "When was the last time you talked to your daughter?" she asked gently, instead of at her. The words landed like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth to answer, and realized I couldn't, because she was right. I had spent so long trying to teach Emily, protect her, correct her, guide her, that somewhere along the way, I stopped listening. I thought love meant steering her away from mistakes. But maybe, to her, it had felt like control. That night, after my session, I stood outside Emily's room again. I stared at the door for what felt like forever before finally knocking. No response. I knocked again, softer this time. "Emily, can we talk for a minute?"
From inside came the familiar sigh. "What now?"
My heart squeezed, but I kept my voice gentle. "Just 5 minutes.
Please."
There was a long pause, then the faint shuffle of movement.
"Fine."
I pushed the door open slowly. Her room was a reflection of her. Messy, creative, chaotic. Sketchbooks and half-finished canvases covered her desk. Fairy lights draped across her bed frame flickered softly, their glow warm against the dark walls. The faint scent of acrylic paint mixed with vanilla lotion. It was beautiful, in its own unfiltered way. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, earbuds in, scrolling through her phone. She pulled one out as I stepped in. "I'm not here to yell," I said carefully. "I just want to understand." She looked up at me, wary. "Understand what? Why you're so angry with me?" Her eyes flickered, uncertain. "You really want to know?"
"I do."
For a moment, she didn't speak. She picked at the corner of her blanket, avoiding my gaze. When she finally looked up, her eyes were glassy. "Because you don't listen, Mom," she said quietly. "You just tell me what to do all the time. What to wear, when to come home, who to hang out with.
You make everything about rules and responsibilities. I can't breathe."
Her voice cracked on the last word, and my heart sank. I wanted to defend myself, to explain, to justify, but I stopped. "For once, I didn't interrupt. I never meant to make you feel that way," I said softly. She scoffed.
"You act like you're perfect.
Like you've never made mistakes." That one hurt, because she was right. I'd spent so much time trying to be strong for her, to show her stability, that I'd hidden my own flaws like shameful secrets. I sat down on the edge of her desk chair, hands trembling slightly.
"I'm not perfect," I said after a moment. "God knows I've messed up plenty. I
didn't want you to get hurt like I did when I was your age."
Her eyes softened slightly.
"You mean Dad?"
I nodded. "Yeah.
And a lot of other things I never told you." She frowned, curious. "Like what?" I took a deep breath. "When I was 16,
I thought I knew everything too. I trusted people I shouldn't have. I made choices that hurt me, and I thought I had no one to turn to. My mom wasn't really there for me, and I swore I'd never let my daughter feel that kind of loneliness. But I think I went too far the other way. I tried so hard to protect you that I forgot to hear you. Her face shifted, surprise, then guilt, then something softer. I didn't know that, she whispered. I know, I said, my voice breaking. That's on me. I should have told you. I should have let you see that I'm still learning too. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of her fairy lights. She stared at her lap, wiping at a tear with her sleeve. I just feel like I'm always disappointing you, she said finally. Like no matter what I do, it's not enough. I'm not you, Mom. I can't be. My throat tightened. You don't have to be me, sweetheart. I never wanted that. Then what do you want from me? She whispered. I smiled sadly. Just you. The real you. Even when you mess up. Especially then. Something in her cracked then, the wall she'd built around herself starting to crumble. Her shoulders shook as she whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. I stood, slowly crossing the room. Hey, I said softly, crouching beside her bed. Look at me. She did, eyes red, face wet. I know it's hard, I said. I know I've been, a lot. But everything I've ever done, every rule, every lecture, it all came from one place, fear. I'm terrified of losing you. You're my whole world, Em. And when you pull away, it feels like the ground disappears under me. Her lips trembled. I didn't mean it, she whispered. That night, when I said I hated you, I was just mad. I didn't mean it. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I know, I said, my voice breaking. But it still hurt. I know, she said quietly. I hurt too. And that's when I did something I hadn't done in months. I reached out and wrapped my arms around her. For a second, she went stiff, like she wasn't sure how to respond. But then she melted into me, sobbing, shaking, clinging to me like she used to when she was little. I held her tight, my tears falling into her hair. It's okay, I whispered. We're okay. We stayed like that for a long time, two broken pieces trying to fit back together. When we finally pulled apart, she sniffled and gave a small laugh. You're crying, she said. So are you, I smiled. Yeah, she said, wiping her nose on her sleeve. It's gross. We both laughed then, real laughter, the kind that felt rusty but healing. That night, we talked. Really talked about her dad, how his absence made her angry, how she blamed me for him leaving even though she knew it wasn't my fault. About school, the pressure to fit in, the fear of not being enough. About her friends, how some of them made her feel accepted and others made her feel small. And about me, about how she missed the fun mom I used to be, before work and bills and exhaustion turned me into someone who forgot how to laugh. We talked until the clock hit midnight. The walls that had felt so tall between us finally began to crumble. At one point, she hesitated before asking, Do you still think I'm a kid? I smiled gently. You'll always be my kid. But I know you're growing up. And I think I need to start trusting you to make some of your own choices. She nodded slowly, like she was processing something heavy but good. I'll try to make better ones. The road to healing wasn't fast. It never is. There wasn't some magical morning where everything suddenly felt okay again. There were awkward silences, half-hearted attempts at conversation, and moments where we both slipped back into old habits. But slowly, quietly, we began to find our rhythm again. One conversation at a time. It started small. One morning, I made pancakes, her favorite, with blueberries and a little extra syrup. I didn't call her down like I used to. I just left a plate on the counter and went about packing my lunch for work. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps on the stairs. She walked in, sleepy, hair messy, wearing one of my oversized hoodies. She looked at the pancakes, then at me. You made breakfast? She asked cautiously. I smiled. Yeah. Thought you might be hungry. She nodded slowly, sat down, and took a bite. We didn't talk much, just small things about school, her art project, the weather. But that morning felt like a bridge. A fragile, new bridge built on something softer than before, understanding. From there, we kept building. We started eating breakfast together again, not every day, but often enough that it began to feel normal. I made an effort to listen more, to let her finish her thoughts without jumping in with advice or corrections. Sometimes she'd tell me about a song she liked or a TikTok trend I didn't understand, and instead of teasing her, I'd ask her to show me. And she did. She'd roll her eyes, laugh at how old I was, but she'd show me and slowly, laughter started to return to our home. She began painting again too. The same desk that used to be covered in clothes and empty snack wrappers became filled with paintbrushes, canvases, and color. She'd paint late into the night sometimes, the faint hum of music spilling from under her door. One evening, she came into the living room holding a small canvas in her hands. Do you think this looks okay?
She asked it was a painting of a mother and daughter, standing apart but with their shadows reaching toward each other, touching hands. I swallowed the lump in my throat. It's beautiful, I said honestly. She smiled shyly. You can hang it in the hallway if you want. That simple offer felt like forgiveness. It's been 6 months since that night, the night those words shattered something between us. And though the cracks are still there, they don't hurt the way they used to. They remind me of how far we've come. We still argue sometimes, about chores, homework, curfew. That's part of being family. But now, there's something softer in the middle of those arguments. Love. One Saturday morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing something. She looked up when I walked in. Hey, she said. Can you read my essay for English? Of course. It was titled The Person Who Taught Me the Most. I didn't expect much, maybe something about her art teacher or a friend. But as I read the first line, my breath caught. The person who taught me the most is my mom, not because she's perfect, but because she never gives up on me, even when I make it hard to love me. My vision blurred before I finished the second paragraph. I had to blink away tears just to see the words. When I looked up, she was watching me with a small, nervous smile. You wrote this? I asked softly. She shrugged, blushing. Yeah. I mean, you deserve it. I walked around the table and pulled her into a hug. She didn't pull away. In that moment, I realized something that took me 16 years to truly understand. Love isn't about control or perfection. It's about presence. It's about being there, even when you don't have the answers. A few weeks later, while cleaning her room, which, for the record, is still always messy, I found a sticky note on my desk. It said, in her familiar, loopy handwriting, sorry for what I said. I don't hate you. I just didn't know how to tell you I was hurting. I sat down on her bed and cried. Not the loud, aching sobs of heartbreak, but the quiet kind, the kind that come when pain finally gives way to peace, because I finally understood. Sometimes, when our kids push us away, it isn't hate. It's pain. They don't know how to say I'm scared or I feel lost or I need you but don't know how to ask. So they say I hate you instead. And as parents, our job isn't to take those words as truth, it's to stay. To wait outside their door. To keep showing up, even when they tell us not to. If I've learned anything, it's this: parenting isn't about being perfect. It's about persistence. It's about loving them in silence, through slammed doors and broken curfews, through the mistakes and the distance, because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet presence, a soft knock on the door, a warm breakfast waiting on the counter, a note tucked into a lunch bag that simply says, I'm here if you need me. A few days ago, I watched Emily get ready for her junior prom. She stood in front of the mirror in a pale blue dress, her hair curled, her makeup soft and natural. For a second, I saw her as both, the little girl who once wore fairy wings to school and the young woman she was becoming. She caught me staring in the reflection. What? She laughed. I shook my head, smiling through tears. You look beautiful. She rolled her eyes. Mom, I mean it, I said. You look just like the miracle I prayed for. Her expression softened. She turned and hugged me, quick but tight. Love you, Mom. Love you too, sweetheart. After she left, I stood by the window watching her drive away with her friends, their laughter echoing down the street. I thought about how far we'd come, from that night when she said she hated me to this moment, where love filled the spaces where anger used to live. The house was quiet again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt peaceful. Sometimes I still think about that night. Her red face, the slamming door, the sound of silence that followed. It used to haunt me. Now it reminds me of how strong love can be when it's tested, because the truth is, love isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking, then choosing, over and over, to come back together. And if I could go back to that moment, when she shouted I hate you, I wouldn't take the words away. I'd still let her say them because those words cracked something open in both of us, a space where truth could finally come in, where we could see each other not as mother and daughter locked in battle, but as two people trying their best to love through the mess. So now, when she rolls her eyes or gets frustrated, I just smile. Because I know, underneath it all, she doesn't hate me. She's just growing. And growth is messy. I've learned to give her space when she needs it and arms when she doesn't know she does. I've learned that love isn't a constant harmony, it's a song we keep learning to play, together, imperfectly but beautifully. And on the days when I doubt myself, when I wonder if I'm doing enough, or if she'll remember the good more than the bad, I look at that sticky note still taped above my desk. It reminds me that she saw my love, even when she didn't know how to say it back. And maybe that's what being a mother really is. Loving loud enough for the both of you, until they learn how to love you back in their own way, because in the end, love always finds its way home. I said before I left her room. I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture I hadn't done since she was 12. I love you, Emily. I love you too, Mum, she said softly, and for the first time in months, I believed her. That night, when I finally went to bed, the house felt lighter, not fixed, not perfect, but healing. Like spring after a long winter. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized something Dr. Monroe had told me in my session earlier that day. Repair doesn't erase the cracks, but it makes them part of the story. And ours, messy, painful, beautiful, was still being written. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories. I have many more stories to share. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Have you ever had a moment where someone you love said something that broke you, but deep down, you knew it came from pain, not hate? Share your thoughts or experiences below. I'd love to hear them.